EA Sports College Football 25 Early Access dropped yesterday. This game is so much fun. I'm having an absolute blast with it. However, I have seen a lot of people, and people even ask me and say that recruiting is pretty confusing and they're not exactly sure what to do in recruiting for Dynasty mode. So this is going to be a quick tutorial for recruiting in College Football 25. Now keep in mind, this is not going to be a tutorial on how to get the #1 recruiting class or how to land a 5-star. I'm still learning that myself as this game literally just dropped, but this is going to be a very basic overview of recruiting in College Football 25 so you can better understand what the heck you're doing when you get into the recruiting process in this game. So just like previous NCAA football games, you're going to go ahead and set up your recruiting board, and these are going to be all the guys you want to recruit throughout the season. One thing that's nice about College Football 25, if a recruit plays a position that you need, it'll show need in bright red right there on the prospect list, so you already know you might want to go ahead and add them to your board. I'm not going to go into too much detail right here. This is pretty self-explanatory. It's very similar to NCAA 14 and 13. It shows you their interest in you, their stage, their state, the pipeline you probably want to pay attention to. Just quickly to explain the pipelines again, you want to have a higher level in the pipeline. The levels are 1 through 4. You can see them in that column right there. The higher the level, the more influence you have when recruiting from that pipeline. So there's 50 different pipelines in the game. One of them, for example, is Metro Atlanta. So if there's a player from Atlanta and you have a level 4 pipeline for Metro Atlanta, you are going to have a pretty big bonus when recruiting that player. On the other hand, if you're a level 1, you're not going to have much of a bonus at all. Now, before you advance the week, you're going to want to scout these players that you put on your prospect board. It will not show you their overall, but you can discover some of their abilities as well as their attributes. Each time you scout a player, it costs 10 hours, and you'll want to pay attention to your total hours that you have here in the top right. You can see Missouri has 750 hours to use. However, that's during the off season. This will change during the actual season. Now, I know there's a lot of new people playing this game that didn't play the previous NCAA football games. So this green thing right here that pops up, that means this player is a gem. That means they are better than people thought. So right now, this guy is a 4-star. He might actually be a 5-star. Similarly, if it is a red thing that pops up, like a red broken gem, that means they are a bust. They are worse than it says they are. So maybe there's a 4-star, but they're actually a 3-star. So once you have gone through and scouted all the players on your board, you can go ahead and advance the week. And this is where we get into the meat and potatoes of recruiting, where you're actually going to have to make pitches and learn about the player and all that. And every time you advance the week, this little summary thing will pop up that shows you what's going on in recruiting. So it's a little helpful tool there. So once you are looking at your recruiting board, you can sort it by clicking X, and this will sort it in different ways. I like to sort it by looking at the recruiting stage. This will show you which prospects are further along during the recruiting process, and it'll show you what stage they're in so you know what you need to do. I also like to sort it by interest status. This will list them from most interested to least interested. So the guys at the top that are most interested, you might want to try to get them to commit pretty early. That way you can use those hours for those other guys. Or you may want to actually take some hours away from the guys that are pretty interested in you and put them towards the guys that are least interested in you and kind of spread the wealth. So when you're looking at a recruit, you'll see this top bar right here that shows their top 8, top 5, and top 3 and how far along they are on this process. And you can do different things depending where they are within this process. So you can see this guy just cracked the top 8. And basically the only thing you can do at this point is to continue to scout them if you haven't fully scouted them yet, or offer a scholarship or add an action. So as stated before, you want to pay attention to your hours in the top right. So Missouri, at least at the base level, they have 600 hours. Now this can be upgraded depending how good the team is and how good of a coach you are, but we're not going to get into all of that in this video. So these are weekly recruiting hours. So this is how many hours you can spend per week. And each task you perform has a specific number of hours tied to it. And you can also only spend 50 hours per player per week. Again, this can also be upgraded. We're not getting into that though. The last thing you want to look at when looking at a recruit are their motivations over here on the right. You'll notice on the left side of the motivations, there are X's, there are check marks, and there are question marks. So a check mark means that player cares about that specific motivation, and X means they do not. A question mark means you have not found out if they care or not. They're only going to have 3 green check marks, and those 3 green check marks create their ideal pitch. So these first actions you're performing, you're doing so trying to find out what their ideal pitch is. Now the grades on the right side of the motivations are for your school. So if it's an A+, that means your school is really good at it. If it's a C-, that means your school is really bad at it. Obviously you want these grades to be high because then recruits will be more interested in you and it'll be easier to recruit guys to your school. And you can see a more in-depth look of these 14 motivations for your school if you go over to the My School tab, and it'll tell you how to improve those grades. But again, we're not getting into all of that today. So with all of that being said, when a guy is in his top 8 or not even in his top 8 yet, you are going to add an action and pick from one of these 4 things right here: search social media, DM the player, contact friends and family, send the house. You'll notice each one has a certain amount of hours it costs to do. So searching social media is only 5, all the way up to sending the house, which is 50 hours. And performing these actions will do 2 things. 1, it'll make the recruit hopefully like you more. And then 2, it'll hopefully reveal what their ideal pitch is. So as you're performing different actions, you may move up or down their recruiting board based on what other schools are doing as well. But you'll also be figuring out what their motivations are. That way you can find the ideal pitch. And then when we get to the pitch stage, you can give the correct pitch. So for this guy, I chose contact friends and family, which costs 25 hours, but it does the second most amount of influence on this player. And keep in mind, you can double up on these. So I could have done like contact friends and family and DM the player. You just can't go over that 50 hours per player. I was kind of just doing random things for this video, but when you're in your own dynasty, you'll see from week to week what recruits you should be spending more hours on based on if they like you or not, and also based on how good they are. And remember, you can also offer these guys scholarships. They're not going to commit to your school until you offer them a scholarship, so that's something you definitely want to do at least at some point, but probably earlier on. And before we go too much further, I also just want to quickly touch on deal breakers. So if a player has a deal breaker, that is a requirement your team must meet in order to get that recruit to commit to your school. So you can see this guy's deal breaker right here. It's championship contender. You must have a B-. My team has a B, so we're safe. It's not a big deal. We can actively recruit this player and he can commit to us no problem. However, it is possible for my championship contender to drop below that B- during this season, and then he will no longer be able to commit to my school. Or if he does commit and then I still drop below that B-, he will actually decommit. So that is something you will want to watch out for when playing this game. Hopefully your team is just successful and you don't have to worry about that anyways. So like I said, as you advance the week, it'll show you this quick little summary of recruiting right here. So here's a good example of a recruit's top schools list. So I'm currently number 5 on this list. And I definitely have some ground to make up if I want to get this recruit. You'll notice I only spent 10 hours on this guy, so I'm definitely going to want to put more hours towards this guy if I want to move up on his list. So I decided to offer him a scholarship because I hadn't done so yet, and then also search his social media to find out more about him, and hopefully that'll help us move up on his list. Now, like I said, I was just kind of doing stuff to make this video, but if I really wanted to get this guy, he is a 4-star. I would probably need to spend more than just 5 more additional hours. I probably need to start doing things like contacting his friends and family and sending the house if I actually wanted to get this recruit. So again, our goal is to figure out what this guy cares about. The only thing we know right now that he cares about is his proximity to home, and we know he also does not care about coach stability. And as we perform more actions and invest more hours into him, week by week, we're going to learn more about this guy. The problem is we're pretty far behind and we're only 5th on his list, so there's a good chance this guy ends up committing elsewhere. But you can kind of see how the recruiting process works. So this is the next week, and you can actually see we moved to 4th on this guy's list. I sorted by recruiting stage, and I realized this guy was already in his top 3, which means he's about to decide where he's going to go to school. So some of these guys move very, very quickly, and they could commit in just a week or 2 because they go from their top 8 to their top 3 that quickly. So some of the guys you're not very intentional about at first might commit to somebody else like within a week. But once they get into the top 5, you can start pitching them. Now this guy, we literally only know that he cares about proximity to home. We also know that he doesn't care about those other 5 that have the X's. But it's going to be a little hard to pitch this guy because we don't know exactly what he cares about. So I removed the friends and family action. You can actually remove actions. Some people didn't realize that. I then added a new action, scrolled down to pitch, and chose soft sell. The difference between soft sell and hard sell is that a hard sell is going to have a lot more influence on the player. So if you know their ideal pitch, you can hard sell them because you know you're not going to pick the wrong thing. If you do not know their full ideal pitch, which I do not know about this player, you probably want to soft sell. That way you don't hard sell them on something they don't care about. Soft selling is also only 20 hours, where hard selling is 40 hours. Now, I will also say if you're using a small school, there's a good chance you end up soft selling even when you know the ideal pitch, just because you don't have a lot of hours. I found myself doing that with Kent State because I only had like 350 weekly hours, and I really just couldn't afford hard selling players. So once you choose soft sell or hard sell, there are 20 pitches to choose from. Each of these 20 pitches align with 3 of the motivations on the right. You can see how it's highlighting different motivations as I go to different pitches. So I hope this is starting to make sense now. You want to pick the pitch that aligns with the 3 things they care about. Now the problem is I don't know what the 3 things this player cares about are. But I see this pitch right here, time to get to work, aligns with the one I do know he cares about, and then the other 2 I know he doesn't not care about them. So I decided to choose this one, and again I was soft selling him on it because I wasn't sure if he actually cared about those other 2 things. Because let's say he doesn't care about those and I hard sell him on it, he's not going to want to come to this school. So going back to Joel, I decided to do the same thing with him. He's in his top 5, which means teams can start pitching him. Now, you don't have to pitch at this stage if you do not want to. The problem is other schools probably are pitching him and you're going to fall really far behind and he'll probably end up committing elsewhere. So just like the last recruit, I'm guessing on this pitch and I'm soft selling him. So this is the next week. I moved down to the 5th school on his list. You can see right here that I picked 2 out of 3 right on his motivations. So I did not pick the ideal pitch, but I did pretty good, I guess. Like I said, I got 2 out of 3 right. But at this point, I would probably just remove this guy from my board. I don't think I'm going to be able to get this guy. He's going to commit elsewhere. So here's an example of a scenario where I actually know the guy's ideal pitch. It's conference prestige, playing style, and proximity to home. So I can go in here and hard sell him on the ideal pitch. So you can see the 3 motivations he cares about align with this pitch right here. And I did the same thing right here with this recruit, Max Awesome. Now, the other thing you can do once you get into the top 5 for a recruit is not only pitch him, but schedule a visit. So I chose to schedule this guy's visit against Auburn. And after you choose the date, you choose one of 14 different activities the recruit can do on his visit. These 14 activities line up with one of the motivations over there on the right. So you just choose one of the ones that he cares about. You're going to want to choose one of the ones that your team is graded high in. So you can see here, I chose family visit as the activity that lines up with proximity to home, which he does care about, and my school is rated A+ in it. So this guy we're sitting pretty with right now. And bang, we just got our first commitment. Now this hasn't been one of the guys I've been highlighting throughout this video, but I've been doing the same thing just with this guy and we ended up getting a commitment. So just as I predicted, Joel ended up locking us out. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove him from the recruiting board. So I just kept doing exactly what we've been doing so far. And here we go. Max Awesome just committed to Missouri. So let's fast forward all the way to National Signing Day. All the players that verbally committed to you will hopefully sign on this day if they do not decommit. And the only reason they should decommit is if they have a deal breaker that you are no longer meeting the requirement for. So you can see we have a few guys here that signed. Kasim Jackson, Treg's right above him. That was our only 4-star. I think we only had like 6 or 7 guys that actually signed with us. But that's because I basically just sped through the whole thing. But I hope this gave you a good overview of how recruiting works in college football 25. Again, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to get these 4 and 5 stars, exactly how to sign like a top 3 class. Once I find my little hacks and tips and tricks, I will definitely make a video about that. It is so in depth. I didn't even get into the sway feature that you can do during recruiting, and as well as how to upgrade your recruiting hours and different things like that. But for those of you that are confused, I hope this gives you a good overview of going from stage to stage. At first, you're just trying to figure out what the player cares about. Then you start pitching and scheduling visits, and then hopefully you can get that commitment. This game is so much fun, dude. I'm going to have a lot more videos coming out. I'm going to have Dynasty series, Road to Glory series. I definitely want to check out Road to College Football Playoff. I'm probably going to have a series about that. I'm still just trying to figure out how to play the game because I'm definitely not good yet. But follow me on Instagram at BringNCAA A name change may be coming soon to that, but follow me there. Follow me on Twitter at TubbyLight, and then subscribe here for the video content.